Welcome. I'm your host, Nancy Burdick, and this is So Many Possibilities, a program focused on what's going on in the local fiber arts scene. In this episode, we focus on the basic tools necessary to sew, mend, or quilt. Sewing machines can make fast work of these activities as long as the machine, needle, and thread are well matched to the task. Local machine expert Kathy Racine is the owner of the Charlton Sewing Center. She's been repairing, teaching about, and selling sewing machines for over 30 years. We traveled to Charlton, Massachusetts to her shop to get her perspective on the basics of machine maintenance and use, how to determine whether a potential yard sale find is just that and not a money pit, and how to decide what type of machine and thread will work best for the project you have in mind.
Now we have the yard sale special, and that's exactly what this machine is. This one happens to be a Kenmore, and it's an old Kenmore. And just so you know, an old Kenmore is a good machine. It was back when Kenmore was good, better, best, and they meant it. So the gentleman who found this, he was so excited because it was little. He knew nothing about it. Like, I can't find the bobbin case. So we kind of messed around. No, this doesn't slide off. Well, that comes up. This doesn't slide off. But this comes out, and lo and behold, there's the bobbin case. So keep in mind, I believe he paid $20 for this. So it had the wiring. That's important stuff. Wiring could cost $40, $50. So right now, let's see if it has an on-off switch. It must. So the first buyer beware is just because the needle goes up and down doesn't mean it's a working sewing machine. It means the motor's good and the presser foot's good. The next thing that we looked for was, there is no bobbin case in there. But you start searching around. And now you figure out where things are. All right, you just saved yourself about $15 because you found the bobbin case. So I put that in. Want to make sure it's not bound up? Sounds good as far as nothing comes to a dead halt. What does the machine do? Not a lot. It does straight stitch. It does a blind hem. It does a buttonhole. And it does a 3-step zigzag, which is for applying elastic. And now we're back to straight stitch. This is the only other dial. Now we have zigzag. This is another place an old machine could dry up. If you watch the needle, you see my needle is not going back and forth to zigzag. Right now, this machine doesn't do zigzag. Still a straight stitch machine, but it doesn't do zigzag. So that is something I would want to look into. Now I could say, the machine doesn't do zigzag, it's broken. Or I can say, this machine probably hasn't been oiled for a long time. I can probably get it to do zigzag. So in front of the customer, I take the top off and I start to wiggle. That's where my problem is. This machine is totally dried up. It's hard for me to move it. I'm going to get oil in there and he'll have zigzag. So now for $20 for the purchase and whatever the sewing machine dealer orders for a complete servicing, you now have a sewing machine that does straight, zigzag, blind hem, and buttonhole. This is a good place to start because these older machines, they had very few breaking parts. So it's already starting to do the zigzag a little bit more. So don't be afraid of going to a yard sale as long as you have a little bit of knowledge. Do not let them plug it in and say, see, it works, because you don't know if it works yet. Okay? See, it's complete. That bobbin case is unbelievably important. You want the bobbin case in there. But other than that, a good technician can get this machine working. And you've got yourself a good starter machine. Now, starter machines, a lot of people, as they get more involved with sewing, call it their backup machine. If you get really, really involved with sewing, and you have to bring your regular machine in for a servicing, and the service technician says that'll be 2 weeks. If you have a backup machine, you have a machine that you don't have to wait for 2 weeks. You can keep sewing. So don't be afraid of the yard sale machine as long as you go in there with some knowledge. Be also aware that almost all the instruction manuals, this is a really strange machine. You can go online, and a lot of places now are offering the instruction manuals for free. There are also places, and I personally love this class, where I bought this machine at a yard sale and you got it sewing and I love how it sews, but I don't know anything about it. Can I have a class with you? And the class would be how to use your sewing machine. I personally love that class. I'm sure there are other places that offer a class that lets you know how to use the machine that you have. Good class to take. So you've decided to start sewing again. So the first thing you'd say is, oh, I need a sewing machine. This is a featherweight. It's probably from the 50s. It's a great machine to start with. All it does is straight stitch. That means the stitches are always just in a row. It's easy to steer. It's easy to look at. Everything about it is easy. Oh, I think I need to go in reverse. Okay, you're done. Easy machine to use. There's a thing called thread tension. There it is. There's the lighting. There's the stitch length. That's all you need to know. There's a bobbin case. Every machine that you look at now will have a bobbin case. This machine is not electronic. It's not computerized, but your basic black sewing machine, if you've got Nana's machine, you can get started because it's strong, it's reliable, and all these things are easy to use. A straight stitch machine, it's fine, but wouldn't it be fun to have zigzag? But we still can get a mechanical machine that does zigzag. Zigzag means your needle can go from left to right while you're sewing. But the other thing that people are starting to do, which is pretty exciting, is I want to start a small Etsy business. I want to make tote bags. I want to make dog beds. So you better be thinking about a strong machine. And that's where buyer beware. I don't recommend just buying a machine on the internet because it says it's strong. This is where going to your local sewing machine dealer and trying out a machine with your product, which right now I have denim. That's 2 layers, that's 4 layers, that's 8 layers. I'm going to run it with my hand. That's going through 8 layers of denim. Reverse, goes backwards. So that's one of the things when you buy a machine. Do you need a strong machine or are you just going to mend? So we know this machine is strong. Now I'm going to do another stitch. Some of the things that you're fixing or making are stretch fabric. So on this particular mechanical machine, I touch a button. I go to the word stretch and I choose a stitch width. The first thing people say is, oh, I'm never going to be able to remember that. That's why not buying your machine necessarily online, but buying it from a store that they're going to give you instructions, one-on-one, hands-on. Okay, so you've decided you're going to make stretch pants for your kids or for your own exercise. See how this fabric stretches. So I have set up a machine that has a stitch called stretch stitch, and I've got it set up for stretch stitch. You see the fabric isn't moving through quickly. There's nothing wrong with the machine. The stretch stitch does everything repetitively. And I'm going to give myself enough of a sample in a stretch stitch. And I'm not going to do anything magical yet. I'm going to go to just a regular straight stitch with that featherweight had. Would do a nice job. And I'm going to do that on this side, just like my featherweight would have done. Here's my straight stitch, and when I pull it, the stitches broke. That's because they weren't stretch stitched. Here's one of the places that it broke, and you can hear it break. This is that thing called a stretch stitch. The stretch stitch is not going to break. So if you pull a sweatshirt over your head, or you pull your slacks up and it's got stretch fabric, a stretch waistband, this will stretch and relax. So if all you have access to do is a straight stitch machine, just know your stitches are going to break. So I'm going to do stretch fabric. Okay, take that next step up. Get a machine that has a stretch stitch. Now, one of the things that when you look at machines, there's going to be things called features or options, or as I call them, bells and whistles. One of the bells and whistles that I personally like, I'm going to show you. I'm sewing along, and let's say the needle stopped in the down fabric. I go to lift it. Oh, I can't get it out. So I always have to reach over, and my first thought is, okay, the needle's out of the fabric, but the fabric still won't come out. So everybody's used to, okay, I have to move the hand wheel forward to get rid of that thing that I thought was a knot. All it was the stitch wasn't completed. So the next machine we're going to look at completes the stitch. Now we're into a machine that's got bells and whistles, but they're good bells and whistles. Let's take a look at some features that are on a lot of machines now. First here, I don't know if you can see it, but I'm going to tell you about it. There's a picture of a turtle and there's a picture of a rabbit. That has to do with speed control. I have it on turtle. This is as fast as this machine will go. So if it's the first time you've ever sewn, wouldn't it be nice to know that no matter what you did with the foot control, you weren't going to go any faster than this? Now you're an expert, and we're going to go to rabbit. Okay? So that's a feature, or what I like to call bells and whistles. Look where the needle stopped. It stopped in the down position. I'm going to lift the foot, and I'm going to do what's called pivot. You would pivot on a pocket. You'd pivot on the handles of a pocketbook. You'd pivot on many pieces of clothing. You'd pivot when quilting. I sew. It stops in the needle down position. I pivot. Now you're all done sewing. So the first thing you did on the straight stitch machine, on the mechanical machine, is you brought your hand over here and you moved the needle. On many, many machines, you're going to go to a picture of a needle with an arrow up and down. Now two things have happened. A picture of a needle with an arrow up has come up. Now the machine electronically stops in the needle up position, so that when I lift the foot, I pull the fabric out. No longer messing around with this. Now you're going to be doing sewing projects that maybe you have to get the needle out of the fabric 80 times. If you have your machine electronically set on needle up, that's all done. If you have it set electronically up, when you go to pull your fabric out, you are no longer doing that. Some other features that you might want to look at when you're looking at a sewing machine is Where do I wind the bobbin? Most machines now are winding the bobbin on the top. When I was growing up, there was a thing called touch and sew. The bobbin wound right down inside the bobbin case area. Where is your thread tension? On that featherweight, it was here. On this particular machine, it's here. You are in total control of the thread tension. There are computerized machines that the tension is even preset. You go to a buttonhole, the thread tension changes. You go back to straight stitching, the thread tension changes. That's way down the road for some sewers. That is not the first machine that you need to get. So on your mechanical machine, you had lots of dials to make changes. On an electronic machine, you have buttons. So I'm going to tell the machine that I want to go into a different set of stitches. There's a heart, there's a heart. So I know I'm going to call up these stitches. This little kite tail is 34. This is when all your math classes made a difference. Tens column, ones column. I am now ready to make the kite of a tail, the tail of a kite. I made no other changes. I brought up the stitch and it's making it. One more feature that this particular machine has is I'm going to, lots of noises. When I'm done, it cut the thread. Another one of the bells and whistles. If you know you are going to be doing that 100 times a day, pulling the fabric out, cutting it, maybe a thread cutter would be nice. That's totally up to you. This is where you are now in control of making the purchase of the machine. What I try to avoid is, oh, and you need to have a thread cutter. I'm going to tell you it has a thread cutter. You need to decide if you need a thread cutter. I can make everything seem exciting on a machine. Back when all machines are being sold on television, is it QVC? One of the things that would happen is, and this machine comes with a foot pedal. And they made it exciting. Like, oh, I got to get that machine. That one comes with a foot pedal. If your machine doesn't come with a foot pedal, your machine doesn't run. So sort of be educated on what you think you need, because a foot pedal is not exciting. Straight stitch is not exciting. Thread cutter, that can be exciting if you think you're going to use it a lot. So this is electronics. You change stitches with buttons. You make different arrangements here with buttons. A lot of machines now, and this, a lot of people are liking this. This is on red right now. I'm going to unplug the foot control, and now I can run the machine just with a button, and I can slow it down with a button. The thing that's nice for, if you are getting into a quilting technique called free motion, you don't have to be thinking about your foot, you don't have to be thinking about anything except your hands doing free motion. You have to be ready for that. That is not the first thing you're going to do when you quilt. You are not going to make a 9-patch quilt, put it together, and free motion quilt it. You have to gain those skills. But if you are already there, know there are machines out there that if there's a green light on that button someplace on the front of the machine, it can run without a foot control. So this is electronics. So you've gotten your sewing machine. Now the next important thing to know about is thread. If you've gotten your sewing machine at a yard sale, quite often there's baggies of thread. That's what this was, a bag from a baggie of thread. And thread starts to experience something called dry rot after 7 years. I can keep breaking this into little short pieces. If you put this spool through a sewing machine, it's going to break. It's not the sewing machine's fault. It's the thread's fault. One of the clues is this is a wooden spool. It's been a day or two since they made wooden spools. Here's another wooden spool. This one is J&P Coats. Wonderful company, but again, it breaks easily. Another wooden spool. Don't throw these spools away. They're very collectible. The next thread you're going to see a lot is Dual Duty Coats & Clark. Dual Duty is a little bit heavy for fine seams, but you're going to see it's very strong. Okay. The thing about a lot of the Coats & Clark is that this cap is very rough. That's why the sewing machine has these things called spool caps. Use them. I am now protecting your thread from a rough spool. Threads come in a lot of different sizes and fiber contents. You're going to be able to find polyester, cotton, very fine. This is 60 weight. Very heavy. That's 12 weight. Large spools, there's over 1,000 yards here, but if you only need a little bit of a color, there's 164 yards here. If you want a finer thread for a very fine seam, you have this particular one is polyester, 60 weight. When you put it into a seam, it hardly shows, but it's also very strong. I have another spool cap here, because if you use this spool cap on this spool of thread, it's too big. Most of your machines will have a smaller spool cap. It will still protect the thread from the end of the spool, but it will not be oversized and make it go up and over. I show this one. This is Mulanicki. Mulanicki has not been available for a long time. I don't even know how old this spool is, but it's still as strong as any thread out there. So my rules are, if it's hard to spell, if it's hard to pronounce, or if it costs more than about $2.25, it's probably good thread. That's Thread 101.
Here's a short how-to on sewing a handy kitchen bowl cozy. So we're ready to make our bowl cozy. It's something you might have seen before. People use it for keeping their hands from being burned with a microwaved bowl, or keeping their hands from being iced with a bowl of ice cream. I've got my materials together. You need 100% cotton feature fabric, 100% cotton batting, and 100% cotton thread. So let's get into it. So for this particular bowl cozy, you need 2 pieces of cotton fabric. This is a 10-inch square, and you also need 2 pieces of cotton batting, 10-inch square. So cut those to 10 inches. Then you're going to take both pieces of the cotton batting, and you're going to draw with a pen on this diagonal using a ruler, and draw this diagonal. Since it's a 10-inch square, you're going to take your ruler and you're going to measure in 5 inches from here, and draw a line down, and another to find the exact center, line down here. So your pieces of batting, 2 of them should look exactly like that. Once you have that done, you're going to make the notches. So you're going to measure 1 inch on either side of these lines and 1.5 inches up, and then draw a little teepee. And you're going to make sure you do that on all 4 edges, and you're going to take that and pin it down to the back side of your feature fabric. Pin it down. Take your sewing machine and you're going to sew across the diagonals on both. So you have 2 sets. You have a set, 2. After you've sewn the diagonals, you're going to fold on the center line. You're going to fold it in half, and where these little teepees meet, you're going to put a pin, and you're going to sew here, and then you're going to sew the one across from it right here. You're going to backstitch here to reinforce it, and backstitch there. And you'll have those two done. Then you're going to turn it, and you're going to do the other two. And it will end up looking like that. Sewn completely like that. You're going to cut your excess off on each side, and then you'll have both of them. Turn one inside out, so the pretty sides are touching. And you're going to use your clips. Clip all the way around. Make sure you fold your seam allowance to each side so that you reduce the bulk. You want to leave a little bit of an opening, about 2 inches of an opening, so that you can start sewing. You're going to sew 1/4 of an inch from the edge all the way around. And right about here, you want to leave that open because you're going to have to turn it inside out. Or excuse me, right side out, actually. You turn it at right side out, and you're going to press it neatly with an iron, nice and tight. Make it nice and straight, no wrinkles. Then where you turned it right side out, you're going to tuck each of those seam allowances in, press it nice and tight, clip it, and then you're going to top stitch, probably 1/8 of an inch all around to close that up. So here's our finished product. It's reversible, and you take your bowl, before you put it in the microwave, put it in, mix your oatmeal or your soup or whatever it is, put it in the microwave, heat it up, take it out, your hands are protected. If you weren't going to use the microwave and you were going to put ice cream or slush or something meant to be cold, put that in there and it protects your hands. Thanks for watching. I hope you were inspired by some of the information in today's episode. If you want to learn more about any of the topics, please visit the specific websites below or search for a helpful tutorial online. Local brick and mortar stores like the Charlton Sewing Center are fabulous resources for all you saw in this episode and more. There are so many possibilities.
I'm John Palmer. I'm here with the Hopkinton Historical Society. We're located on 168 Hayden Row Street.